October 2025 presidential election, Marabouts in Abidjan for the capture of state power. Here we go again. About 8 months before the Ivorian presidential election scheduled for October 2025, Téné Birahima Ouattara, known as the Vial, is doing it again with mystical practices that had already borne fruit in 2020, according to him. Indeed, during the previous election, while the Ivorian constitution did not allow a third term for the Vieux Grigou, the Vial had called on great marabouts in the sub-region, and had assured his elder that his third term would be acquired. He affirmed that the marabouts were going to "bassi" the Ivorians, that is to say, bewitch the Ivorian population, especially the military, to make them soft. In addition to this, Emmanuel Macron also had to bewitch so that France would actively support them in their project to capture state power. To do this, the marabouts had recommended and demanded animal sacrifices, but also human ones. When it comes to power, nothing discourages the Ouattara brothers. The sacrifices had been made and the results were not long in coming. Indeed, France declared its support for Alassane Ouattara, described as a candidate by duty by Emmanuel Macron. The Ivorian military behaved like mollusks, and the people, for their part, showed themselves to be powerless, unlike their neighbors in Mali and Guinea. Remember, it was on the advice of the Ivorian dictator, who did not want to go it alone, that Alpha Condé had also decided to serve a third term. It is as if his marabouts were not as powerful as those of the Vial. In any case, Alpha Condé was overthrown and must be meditating on his sad fate to this day. With this success, which, according to him, attests to the power of his marabouts, Téné Birahima Ouattara is convinced that reproducing the same pattern will guarantee them a crushing victory, and a lasting stay in power in 2025. For him, these sacrifices constitute a beneficial plan to be repeated at all costs. For 3 months, the Evil One has brought the greatest marabouts of the West African sub-region to Abidjan. The latter, discreetly installed in the capital, conduct regular consultations on the state of power and the challenges to come. According to his entourage, some of these marabouts had already participated in the mystical operation of 2020. These are almost the same marabouts who had allowed Ouattara to stay in power against all odds. This time, they are doubling their efforts to secure 2025, a source close to him told us. Through constant sacrifices, the marabouts seek to strengthen the position of the regime in place in the face of any potential danger. The rituals are orchestrated with frightening precision. Sacrificed animals and prolonged incantations mark each stage. But these days, there has been a certain unusual excitement. Could it be that the marabouts have perceived a specific threat, or an upheaval on the horizon? In any case, they have recommended, as a matter of urgency, the sacrifice of 150 oxen to ward off any catastrophe, and prepare for the capture of state power in 2025. This ritual, presented as a preventive measure, aims to ward off the mystical and political obstacles likely to disrupt the Ouattara clan's strategy. In Abobo, one can observe trucks filled with oxen that create a scene worthy of a horror film, animals piled up, bellowing under the weight of their destiny, awaiting the immolation planned in macabre conditions. Here again, blood will flow in torrents in a desperate attempt to please the divinities invoked by the regime. These beasts will not escape a cruel immolation. Once the incantations are over, the sacrifices will be made and the blood of the animals will be collected to prepare magic potions for Alassane Ouattara. These potions, used for ritual ablutions, are supposed to guarantee him total control over his political opponents and hypnotize voters and opponents. The meat from the oxen, meanwhile, will be distributed in the canteens of military barracks to capture and strengthen the loyalty of the soldiers to the old rogue. An army officer confirms. Sometimes, while we have a well-established food program, we are told that the Minister of Defense, who loves us so much and is concerned about our well-being, has decided to give us a lot of animal protein, meat to eat. What are we going to do? Above all, let him check and make sure that we eat this meat. We have no choice. Some officers know that it is to make us Mongols, but what are we going to say? While thousands of Ivorians struggle to make ends meet, hundreds of millions of CFA francs are mobilized to finance these practices beyond understanding. These sacrifices of oxen, perceived as a shocking waste, illustrate the blindness of a regime more concerned with its survival than with the well-being of its people. In a country facing glaring social challenges such as poverty, education and health, this scene of bloody profusion is an insult to the population. The RHDP regime invests in the supernatural while the people die in silence. These practices recall the Dark Ages, when leaders clung to power through irrational and bloody means. But are we still in the Middle Ages or in a modern republic, supposed to be guided by laws and rationality? According to insiders, Téné Birahima Ouattara, known as the Vial, is convinced that these sacrifices will allow his brother to maintain his aura, and impose himself without major opposition. The story of 2020, when his Marabouts surpassed those of Alpha Condé, remains a source of pride and motivation for him. This information, although classified as sensitive, remains an open secret for those who closely observe the Vial's movements. The sacrifices begun at the end of 2024, and the beginning of 2025 are only the beginning of a Machiavellian plan, aimed at retaining power at all costs. It is up to Ivorians to remain vigilant, and refuse to give in to this manipulation, whether mystical or political. The coming weeks promise to be crucial. To be continued. Ivorians are doing better today than. That's your opinion, but listen.
Vous aurez la parole tout à l'heure, s'il vous plaît. Je vais pas vous égrener tous les acquis ici.
I am not going to list all the achievements here of President Ouattara's governance, because every time I speak, I am given figures. But we can also give figures. So I want to say that today, Ivorians are truly satisfied with President Ouattara's governance.
Chère tribune, s'il vous plaît, continuons Honorable Mbassou, continuez.
Non, c'est une chose, hein. C'est une chose. Vous savez, tout à l'heure, M. Séméné a dit que... Monsieur Sémien a dit que...
You know, earlier, Mr. Samian said that we need to get out of all these things that have angered and led to crises in Côte d'Ivoire. But that is the attitude that most of you have in the room, intolerance. Intolerance. When some panelists speak, you applaud. When one speaks, you start chatting without even listening to him. I mean, madam, and I affirm it, most of the Ivorians are happy with Alassane Ouattara's governance. Find Chris Yapi on his 2 YouTube channels, his Rumble channel, his TikTok, X, Instagram, VK and Threads accounts.